Brown 45! Brown 45! Hot, 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 hot!
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, Australia.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Any Given Sunday Australia Summer Series, the series where we find out why Australians love the game of NFL. Joining us today is a previous guest of the show, so those who are long-time listeners will know his voice. We've learned about his punting career over for the Broncos in central Oklahoma. Now we learn about how he got into the game. The great man himself, Mr. Ned Balme. How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well, as my voice may not indicate it, but I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me again.
We have working through all the technical difficulties that the internet will provide us, so you sound great on my end, mate. That's the main start.
Let's keep it like that. Let's keep it short, sharp. There's going to be a nice 8-minute podcast, as to not tempt fate.
Yeah, well, we'll get straight into it so that 8 minutes can get started. Like I said, we've learned about the Broncos from you over in central Oklahoma, but when did you first actually get into the NFL?
I think I started getting into the NFL like as a kid because I was just really bad at Australian summer sports. Like I was just really bad at cricket. I was really bad at tennis. And then I can't remember what it was on at the time. I might have been caught like a highlights show on SBS or something like that. And then it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, this is a contact sport that I can watch in summer. This speaks to me. And then it was genuinely one of those things where it was like, cool, I have a sport that I can focus on over summer when everyone else is focusing on sports that, like, no disrespect, like I don't mind cricket and tennis. I was just never any good at them. So it's pretty hard to get passionate about something when you actually are terrible at it. Um, and that was pretty much it, to be honest. That was kind of how it all kicked off. And from there, then you start playing, Madden, and Madden teaches you what to do and how to go about things. And back in those early 2000s, Madden's had like cracking soundtracks as well. So, you're playing Madden and you're listening to great soundtracks, and all of a sudden there's 8 hours of your day gone because you're doing a franchise with Mike Vick.
It's funny. It's actually the Madden pathway is a very common story. A lot of people, that was when they first started to get their head around it. It's got a lot to do with the way that that Madden himself built that game with the programmers to be as much like real football as possible. And so many people learn the game through doing that. The big question, though, that comes from that, so you grafted to this sport because of failure in other sports, but you found this little summer island that you love. So as you were doing that, who became your team and why are they your team?
Well, so initially, obviously being a footy family growing up around the AFL, we have it's 2 degrees of separation with a lot of people. And so one of our family friends through my uncle was Darren Bennett, because Darren knew Uncle Neil, obviously having time being as a player. Obviously, Darren played at Melbourne, and the AFL world's a pretty small community. So the idea of an Australian being over there punting, I think it might have been just him and Matt McBriar at the time at the Cowboys. I think they were the only 2 over there doing it. Obviously Sav went over as well, probably around that 04, 05 mark, or maybe a bit after. But it was mostly Darren Bennett. And the thing that I didn't realize, where and I'm actually very thankful for it now, was that I jumped on the NFL train when Darren Bennett was playing his like 1 year for the Vikings. So I'm like, okay, I'm a Vikings fan. It wasn't until after that I realized that he was a 13, 14-year punter for the Chargers and an all-decade punter for the Chargers, and I just jumped on the last, that last career of his, and that is what made me a Vikings fan, which I'm actually really thankful for because, both franchises are pretty miserable in their own ways, like, regular season success, post-season misery. But I've been to a Minnesota game and I'd rather go and travel to Minneapolis than Los Angeles. That's just me personally. So I'm pretty happy with the decision that I came to.
I was actually looking at something that went around social media a couple of days ago that the Vikings are over in the Super Bowl era, their win rate, their win loss record is actually quite high. They're about like the sixth highest win rate just of total games over that time. And like you say, they haven't starred in the playoffs or anything like that. And even as much as you might have enjoyed the work of Cousins or even Darnold last season, they haven't had one of the genuine superstar, all-timer quarterbacks doing it. But they've won a lot of games. There's been a lot of reason to be happy through that. Yeah, it's not like, you're a Jets fan or anything like that, where there's just like a trail of sadness behind you.
Well, I think trying to remember who I was speaking to about it the other day, but obviously obviously being a Buffalo man, I almost like we're the Vikings and obviously the Bills had that 15-year period, from kind of like mid-90s or 20-year period really, mid-90s to kind of mid-2010s where it was pretty dark. But there's a lot of comparisons between the two franchises where it's like cold. I mean, obviously different being that Minnesota plays inside, but cold weather, cold weather, smaller market, lots of success in certain eras, but never able to bring home the actual Super Bowl. There are those comparisons between them, but Minnesota's been this really, especially since the Wilfs took over it, the Minnesota's been a really just a well-run franchise that I feel like has never really, they've never really like thrown massive shots out there that risk failure. Like sometimes I wish they would, but then in retrospect, you find out, yeah, that was the right call. Like my best friend and I, he's back in America, he's from South Dakota. We were at Buffalo Wild Wings on the 2014 draft night and just stayed there, watched the whole first round of the draft at Buffalo Wild Wings. And there's us at the end of the draft night being really, really pissed off because our Vikings didn't have that winner's mentality and didn't draft up to take Johnny Manziel. And there's us being all pissed off because we're like, this is never going to get us anywhere. And then in about 2 years' time, we're just like, yeah, Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, he's not great, but yeah,
He's not
I'm happy.
Manziel.
I'm happy with him for now. But
There
that's
isn't there isn't a Netflix documentary about the Teddy Bridgewater disaster.
no.
The way that he flamed out, and I think you'd be
He's
relieved about that.
Teddy's much more likely to have like just like a lifestyle like reality show or something like that. Just like it's a really nice thing about how he's just a really, by all accounts, a really good person. But yeah, that's that. You're right though, in terms of like the Vikings quarterback situation. We haven't really had. I don't know. I was never overly sold on Cousins. Like it was always that. There's always that feeling where it's like, cool, we can be really good in the regular season. We've always had pretty good coaches who maximize players, whether it was Zimmer on the defensive side of things, or O'Connell, whipping up a really nice offense. But there's always that lingering question of, okay, when we get to playoff football, what are we actually going to do? That's which is it's not a bad it's like it's not the worst situation to be in. Like it's you still get a good amount of fun to be had each year in, year out watching the game. But there is that question of just, okay, when are we going to get that top five quarterback that that if things go way off track, he can will you back into a game. And it doesn't feel like the Vikings have had that since Favre, like 40-year-old Favre, like 40-year-old before the courts in Mississippi Favre.
Yeah, it's tough when you're at a team that you're just watching a generational star at the Packers for the last 30 years. It's been good. So we've just got a new one, just so you know. We're primed
Yeah.
to have you in all sorts for the next 10 years as well.
But even with the Vikings, when the Bears, like I remember there were years where we would play well throughout the year, but then inexplicably we'd lose to like Mitch Trubisky in round 17 and the Bears, and I just didn't know how that was possible. And then we can't beat like the Rams who in their seasons where they're not reaching any great heights, but we are. Somehow we fall over to them too. There's just this. I know I sound very spoiled right now.
We're going to perk this up a little bit. So you've talked about Madden and the reason that you got into the game, but there's also there's two or three other hockey's a pretty brutal sport that you don't have to play but you can really enjoy, and baseball's on all through summer as well. So what was it about the NFL that you had two or three other sports that you could pick from, but it was NFL that really brought you in?
I think it's just. I mean, obviously, like you see, there's all the highlight reels which seem ancient now of all the big hits. Like a lot of people, is one of the things that drew me to it, especially because you just get hit in different ways to Australian sports. Like I remember, I don't know if you even saw it. There was this old highlight reel package. I think you could like download it on LimeWire or something, and it was like. I think it was like the music was Breathe by Prodigy, and it was just a bunch of big hits for like 4 minutes. And they had the big helicopter hits and everything like that. And that was the first one where you watch it and you're like, wow, every game must be like this. And it's like it's not. But then I think some of it was just the broadcast and everything. I really like the broadcast of it all. I've always thought they've been really, really good productions, just really good to watch. I like, all the telestrator stuff. Getting Foxtel in the early 2000s and having ESPN and seeing those kind of talk shows and those like Sports Center type shows that, we obviously we had like Sports Tonight, but we didn't really have those big extensive ones where it's like, here's an hour just worth of us talking about these highlights and everything like that. We didn't really have much of that in Australia. So I think that kind of stuff combined with, ESPN having a personalities, a lot of those like Sports Center early days personalities and everything. Yeah, Keith Olbermann's, Verrett's. I think that was very appealing as well, just because it was different.
And it's amazing. I think you're right. Like, you look at it now with the AFL, how many AFL talk shows there are. It feels like we've reached the point where there's more AFL talk shows than clubs in the AFL now. I think we're just about there.
When's Kane?
And that feels like it just took us 20 years to catch up to what America was doing. Like in that way, there was always that much media going on. And when you're a fan of it, there's so much to devour as you get into it.
Yeah, and I think and Australia's at a bit of an interesting point at the moment with Australian sport, because we're almost kind of at this period where we're wondering whether we like it or not. At like whether we like this much, or if it's just a case of we haven't gotten, and not to delve too far into the media side of things, but whether we have enough media performers to give us enough variety to make that saturation happen. Obviously, like I personally think he's great, but a guy like Kane Corns has carved a market so much for himself that he's on 5, 6 different shows. That this is this little teething period we have right now where the media of Australian sports is looking to go a bit more American, but we really don't have that many people who can take the ball and run with it, apart from Kane, who, as I said, I love. I'm an Adelaide boy, all right? I like
Kane. So obviously you've spent a lot of your life around AFL, and that is, that's the water you swim in. How do you explain NFL, like American football, to people who don't understand it? And you get that a lot. You say like I tell people I'm into NFL, and they're like, I don't understand that game. It's just massive people smacking each other, and I'm like, yeah, but it's so much more. How do you explain the game?
It's like I feel like the easiest way to describe it is like. It's just like violent chess. That's how I kind of picture it. It's just they're they're pieces on a board that, you know, usually only move in certain ways. And if you imagine it like that, then it's fine. It's You think of a defensive lineman, well, almost like pawns on a chessboard. Generally speaking, there's not too many different ways they move. It's usually forward. That's it. You know, like a cornerback or a safety, where is going to be asked to move in a lot different ways to other pieces on the board, and that's pretty much the way that I can feel like I can explain it in the most simple way. And it's just everyone has their role. Everyone has their role to play, and that's what makes it such a good sport. Whereas unlike soccer, where it's just a different type of team sport where it's you know, something like soccer, an amazing passage of play might require all 11 players, or you know, eight of 11 players. This might only require two players to have the ball, but if one of those 11 players stuffs up their specific role, no matter how minute it might be, that play never comes to existence. And how many times do we see it where the difference between a touchdown is whether a backup running back knows who he's picking up on the block out of the backfield? Like, how many times have we seen potential plays get blown up because someone's off with the fairies and doesn't know his assignment, and then you know, and then the you know, like a defensive end manages to get his hands up because he's not double blocked. Like, I think that's the cool thing about it, in terms of, I think it's a very different team sport, where a lot of people think team sport means everyone on the team has to be involved, when American football is kind of the exact opposite.
And again, I don't know if we've just got your episode has grown worldwide, Charlie, and everyone is now using chess as the analogy. But you're about the fourth person that's used chess as the analogy. But it works, and it's a different way to talk about it, which we makes it easier for those that aren't, you know, fully grasping the idea of it. But coming from the Vikings and you know, some pretty successful teams, and there's some pretty good players out there. It doesn't have to be from the Vikings, but do you have a favourite player of all time, and why he would be your favourite player?
I reckon this could easily like divulge into just one of those remember this guy type conversations. Um, on the Vikings, I mean, the easy one's Randy Moss, like comfortably. It doesn't really get much better than that. But like growing up watching the Vikings, you know, Pat and Kevin Williams, having those two defensive tackles just there the whole time was really satisfying to watch. I love Harrison Smith. I love the fact that he's still playing and he's going to be a one team player. And he just flies around the place. Obviously, Adrian Peterson. You know, living in Oklahoma for 3 years, that man's royalty down there. Although they will, like, people in Oklahoma will fight you if you call him AP, because he is AD all day. That's the nickname. That's the nickname that they gave to him, and then he became AP in the league. So anyone in Oklahoma, if you call him AP, they're like, you mean, they will immediately correct you and say, oh, you mean AD, Adrian Peterson. Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Um, but around the league, my like favorite player of all time is Troy Polamalu. Um,
Yeah.
I just
Wow.
His highlight reel to me is just the most varied of any defensive player. Um, you know, this and everything about it, the hair coming out the back, him, you know, I think it was like jumping over the Titans line
Yep.
to tackle Kerry Collins before the snap, like, is always one of my favorite ones. There's those ones where he literally fingertip scoops an interception in the snow, and you know, like he's probably my number one, I think. But then there's periods there where I was a massive fan of that USC linebacking core that came into the league. It was like Ray Maluga, Brian Cushing, and Clay Matthews, who all came into the league together. And so it's probably like Troy and then Clay second, which is weird as a Vikings fan to have, you
Yeah,
know, the
loving a
Packers
Packers.
outside linebacker as your second favorite player. But yeah, I mean that's outside of the Vikings, Troy. I like it. It has to be for me.
Yeah. And I think
So
if
it's
anyone listening to this and doesn't know who Brian Cushing is, do yourself a favour and Google some of his highlights, headbutting helmets and shit like that. He's an absolute menace.
Just a genuine meathead.
you've definitely in everything you've said so far, you've had a defensive skew. It feels like you really gravitate to linemen, to even mentioning like corners and safeties. Like you seem to view the game through a defensive prism, even just based on what you've said so far. So, if you had to pick a favourite current player in the league, is it a defensive player? Is there a standout defensive player that you love at the moment, or is there someone else that you think is just your favourite player to watch now?
I mean, it's pretty hard not to say Justin Jefferson at the moment as my favorite player. Like it's pretty hard to watch that. I always skew defensive because I know that it's and especially over the past 15 years how the game has gone. It's very reactive to what the offensive minds create and the defensive minds react. And I think when you can excel defensively, that's like incredible to me. Well, actually, one of the people I didn't mention was Luke Kuechly as well. Like
Defense.
the way that he was the way that he essentially dictated play calls purely by his presence and being the smartest person on the field, like was just incredible. But I mean, I think at the moment, I mean, I'm not a massive rap on the bloke, but Nick Bosa, like, I love watching him. I love watching him go about it. It's honestly, it's really hard to pick at the moment because there's just so many like strong contenders, but also I mean from the same team actually. Fred Warner, I love the way just
Yeah,
the amount of ground that he covers sideline to sideline in an era where you know like we've known for the past 5 to 10 years that linebackers are the area that generally speaking you can find a mismatch on. Depending on whether that's with a receiver or with a tight end, or whether it's a bigger bodied tight end or a move tight end, they're usually the ones that you can find a weak link in somewhere. And the fact that there is no weak link in Fred Warner's kind of game, where he just gets sideline to sideline and covers so much ground, to me is just one of those like impressive players that I really wish that we had on our team, basically.
Ooh, that could be something that comes up a bit later, but we're going to talk about favourite games of all time, and I kind of want to know, is it going to be a game where it's 3-0 because the defense has just shut out both sides?
Or I do lean a lot more that way. I remember, the amount of times where, people are watching Super Bowls and like, oh, especially in Australia, you see it where it's like, the casual fan might jump in for their one game of the year and they see it's, 14-7 at three-quarter time or something. It's like, oh, this hasn't been very exciting. And then there's me just like sitting back there tense, just being like, no, you're not seeing what's actually happening here. This is actually a beautiful game. You're just not realizing it. Um, like I loved watching Patriots and Rams in the Super Bowl because I could just appreciate everything that they were doing. But favorite game of all time, I think Super Bowl 43, Steelers and Cardinals, I reckon, is up there. I feel like that doesn't get the love that it deserves for the just the back and forth of it all. Um, just going back and forth, and I reckon I think James Harrison's interception return on halftime is probably the best play in Super Bowl history in my mind. It just doesn't get as much love. Like that's a 270-pound, 5'11" outside linebacker intercepting the ball in the end zone and running it back for a touchdown to swing the game. And we
Just,
don't talk,
just
and we
making
don't
it to the other end.
exactly, and we don't like getting hawked down by I think it was Larry Fitzgerald. Oh yeah, and then and you've got Larry Fitzgerald taking a slant for 70 yards to put them back in front late in the game, and then you got Santonio Holmes catch in the corner, which also probably doesn't get as much respect as it should, as in terms of like an all-time great catch. But in terms of as a fan, my immediate reaction, like the Minneapolis Miracle, Stephon Diggs, um, somehow beating the Saints. I remember I was watching that game when I was working as a sport reporter in Wagga Wagga, and I ran out of the office immediately to FaceTime my mate in the US, and he was at a bar watching it, and there were no actual words said in our FaceTime. It was just two men yelling at their phone in excitement, and then eventually just say, all right, bye, talk to you later, and that's it, and then going straight back into work. Um, and yeah, so probably in terms of as a Vikings fan, there's nothing beats that. But as a game, I can put on YouTube and have as background noise while I'm doing stuff, like Super Bowl 43 for sure. And Ben Graham played in that game, so that's cool.
So
That's a
that
cool thing to.
so the Minnesota Miracle and Stephon Diggs, the emotional roller coaster that must have been Diggs getting traded to the Bills, but then that resulting in having the standout wide receiver. It goes down as one of the best trades of all time, as in everyone seemed pretty happy with the result of that.
Yeah, I don't think you would. I'm not sure if there's ever been a more just mutually beneficial trade that's happened. I mean, I know obviously Diggs isn't on the Bills anymore, but you got a good amount of years out of him, and we continue to get a good amount of years out of Justin Jefferson. It seems like one of those things that at the time I wasn't too phased about it because I feel like our question still fell on the quarterback room. That's the thing, and we
Mm.
Vikings fan, we have this tendency to see the best in our quarterbacks, and we've gone through a lot of them where there's a period where because it's such a well-run organization, you get good stretches of play from quarterbacks that you can trick yourself into thinking, well, we could actually win some games with him. Like we traded for Sam Bradford. Everybody forgets that. We had Sam Bradford for a period of time there. And he won like the first 6 games of the year and then got injured again. But there was a period there where we were like, are we about to get this bargain bin, you know, first overall pick, and he's going to be our quarterback? No, he's not. He's injured. Okay, on to the next one. Teddy Bridgewater, he's looking pretty good. Okay, all right. Career-threatening knee injury. Yeah, not him. The Minneapolis Miracle happens. This Case Keenum guy, you know, if you look at how many
Yeah.
touchdowns, he threw in at the University of Houston, he could be something. We get Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins takes us to the next level. Nah, good, but not great. Like, I think that was the biggest problem. And then lo and behold,
And
because
then,
we're Vikings fans, we get pumped the next week in Philadelphia
but
after the
also, I
Minneapolis
mean,
Miracle.
but your experience last year as well with Sam Darnold is like, oh, hang on, have we fixed Sam Darnold? Is he a franchise quarterback now?
I
Like, that ride last season would have been wild.
I could not have been happier. I couldn't have been happier for Sam that he had that because I felt that he's been
Mm.
just cursed so far in terms of where he's landed in his career at certain spots, apart from obviously like the 1 year that he spent at San Francisco just as an understudy. But like I was very, very happy for him, but I could not have been happier that A, we let him take market value somewhere else because I didn't want that to be the case. And I was
Mm.
even more happy that we quickly unplugged the phone and weren't taking calls from Aaron Rodgers. That's that's what I was happiest with. So of all the scenarios, even though it's a bit of an unknown with McCarthy going forward, I'm as a fan, I'm happiest with this situation going forward than the alternative.
Um, Yeah, everyone talks too much about Aaron Rodgers, but I think there is a chance that you absolutely dodged the bullet of a very painful season there. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens, you know, at the Steelers of all places. But it'll be a wild ride no matter what. But I think you guys, I think the calm that you guys will have, as opposed to Aaron Rodgers being there, will be worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm very. It would have been tough to get pumped up for the year watching Aaron Rodgers post training camp press conferences and stuff. Like nothing about that excites me for the season. And now that's Steelers fans' problems. They can deal with that.
We'll jump ahead, T-Mac. I think you brought it up, talking about great players. If there was one player in the league that you could steal for the Vikings, who would it be?
See, I said Fred Warner before, but I don't think we necessarily need that per se. I, I mean, to be honest, if he was a bit younger, if we're talking like, I would love any time. I would love Trent Williams on my team, even if he is 38 years old now as a left tackle. Um, like, I would take it because the bane of my existence as a Vikings fan has been quarterback protection for the past 10 to 15 years. Just give me any promising, just young first or second year Pro Bowl left tackle. Just yeah, hey, Joe Alt shows any sign of life, in Los Angeles, and I'll take that. It's a very very
Do you
boring.
know what I love about that answer? That is, I love that because you are actually trying to win. Like you're making that decision on trying to win, not I just love the way he throws the ball or like it's not just you're taking a superstar because you love him. You're like, what's the piece we need? And you've gone tackle. It's so
And it's so boring. It's the most like it's I'm so boring that I was that far away from being like, can I trade down and take two extra players? Can I ask for two extra players from different leagues? And let's just really build some depth here, Let's get really boring with it. But if I had to take if I
you
had to
don't
do a
have to
stupid
be.
selection, yeah, a stupid selection that makes no sense in terms of team building, George Kittle, and I'd pair him with Hawkinson as a two tight end set.
Mm,
And
I
it
like
makes zero,
that.
some
yeah,
jumbo
it makes
12
zero
personnel.
sense. But you get some play action in there and some boots with McCarthy, and then he's got two big tight ends and Jets running down the field. Addison on the other side. We could have some fun with that.
You can make it work. You can make it. I like that you pick an offensive player. Everyone's going, he's going to pick a defensive. You picked an offensive player, but you've picked the most defensive side of the offense that you could have. So you're
Yeah.
still just not straying too far away from your roots with that choice. If
Exactly.
you were, we obviously know that you've been a punter at the college level, and mate, I'm sure if you had the opportunity, you'd be a punter at the NFL level. But would that be the position that you would play if you had the chance to play in the NFL?
That's God. That's God telling me to not be stupid and pick any other position. I mean, you're discounting the fact that I played outside linebacker at the mighty Perth Blitz in the West Australian Gridiron League.
We are, yes.
Absolutely neglected that.
I got absolutely killed. Um, is 18-year-old me going around the corner and getting absolutely demolished by a pulling guard from Rockingham. Absolutely kills me. But I mean, I would love to be. Actually, no. If I actually am thinking about playing in the NFL for an extended period of time, uh, long snapper.
Uh,
Yeah, long snapper or a fullback. Be like a like or like a Kyle Juszczyk type. Just get yourself file yourself out a role where you are literally the only person in the league that does it. That'd be cool. But I'm not. I wouldn't be athletic enough to try and test my test myself at any other position in the comp. So yeah, let's go fullback. I'll be one of three in the entire league.
Nice. And you can have a nice little group chat that work out everything together.
Exactly. We can collude to make sure we get our
Um,
pissant contracts.
Now you've got a bit of an advantage over most Aussie NFL fans in that you've played American football, both as I just found out as an outside linebacker and also as a punter. So you understand the game. Are there any rules that still to this day you don't quite understand?
Um, I think there's always ones that catch you off guard because coaches are so clever with exploiting the game. Um, I think there's a lot that catch me off guard sometimes with the whole eligible receiver stuff, but that's very much just a case of trying to identify the formation within the 8 seconds from when they break the huddle to snapping the ball. Probably not that I don't understand it, but I don't agree with the whole fumbling out of the end zone and the opposition getting it. Like I don't
Yeah.
I don't think I'm alone there where I'm just like, why on every other part of the field do you keep the ball, but if you fumble it out of the end zone, the other team gets the ball? It's like because they're being rewarded for forcing a fumble, but not actually recovering it. That's that's the thing that I don't really get. I don't understand why that's the rule. Like to me personally, but that's probably the only rule
I
that
like
just
And
that.
kind of like
also
gets me.
and also when that occurs, often the stakes are so high. Like it feels so horrific. It's either like the game can be on the line and you're just about getting it done,
Yeah,
and it can cost you so badly.
yeah. I don't see why if a team drives 80 yards down the field, a guy gets the ball slapped out at the 1 yard line, and it just goes out of bounds through the end zone, but no one actually recovers it. Why does the benefit go to the? I mean, I sound like I'm a more defensive guy, but why does the assumption just land on, well, the defensive team would have recovered it, and then
Yeah.
and then they would have recovered it, and then also they would have found a way to also get 25 yards down the field. It doesn't That doesn't seem to make much sense to me. And it feels like something that could be easily fixed. You fumble out the end zone, well, you get the ball at the one. That's
Yeah.
that
It's
seems
never a rule
pretty.
that comes into play. It's always a tight game. You never see that rule when
Yeah.
it's 38-0. It's
Yeah.
always
Yeah,
35-38 and they're going for a touchdown to win the game. And
exactly,
that rule
exactly.
always, yeah, it's a perfect
Yeah.
time for it to play. So I actually like it. Let's keep it in there. But um, you're a journo, you're a media man. So this one, I think these next couple of questions really permeate for you. What is your favourite football movie?
Um, it's it's God, there are so many bad ones. Um, I've
Are they
actually
bad
I'm
and they're
like
good, or
I'm trying to think about like the good ones, and I'm just going through all this list in my head. I'm like, no, that's not very good. That's also not very good. My biggest guilty pleasure is actually a movie called Division 3. Uh, and like, trust me, it's definitely out of my wheelhouse because it's got Andy Dick in it, and I do not like him for some reason.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I think it's more so memories than anything. It's like my teammates in college watched it when they were in high school and they found it really funny, so I watched it with them. So they're cracking up, so I'm cracking up. Like I think that's probably why I found it funny more than anything. Um, oh, and because Andy Dick's character in that in that movie came up with the greatest inspirational speech of all time, which is much better than like Al Pacino's Inch speech. He literally just wrote on the whiteboard the word "get some," and he said, "What does get some stand for?" It stands for "go every time so that others may every time." And we ended up writing that on our whiteboard in our locker room. Uh, but probably for shits and gigs, probably any given Sunday. Partly because of that awful Knights uniform in the final game.
Yes,
The
yes.
worst. Just it was this mustard yellow uniform with like a Templar red, just like George Cross thing, and it was filmed in the old Dallas Cowboys stadium or something, and there wasn't a mid-yard logo. There was a midfield strip where like the whole middle of the ground was like this big weird Templar logo or something, and yeah, so for that reason alone, that's one of the best football movies.
It is.
Can't remember
There
much
is
of it.
something compelling in uh, in that film, the way that they have invented these new franchises that are playing. You know, and the Knights it's the they cap it off. It's almost like, is it the Tampa Bay alternate strip? You know, they're orange and red. You know, like they're
Yeah,
The popsicles are grouse.
creamsicle one.
that's right, the
Yeah.
popsicles. But it's like that gone wrong. The Knights
It
color
reminds
scheme.
me of
It's just so displeasing to the eye.
it reminds me of that remember when the NFL did the color rush jerseys? It reminds me of the Jaguars one. Like the really gross mustard full yellow Jags color rush one.
Yeah.
And And the fact that I have a couple of gripes with that movie. One of them being the fact that they were the Miami Sharks and they're wearing all black in Miami. It just doesn't seem to make
Yeah.
much sense to me. But that's probably the least of that film's worries.
So the follow up football movie question, and this is the one dearest to my heart, is where do you stand on the movie Draft Day? Is it the greatest movie of all time, or is it a football illiterate mess that is also the greatest movie of all time?
My dad, totally unironically, loves Draft Day. Like,
Wise man,
loves it.
a wise
Loves it.
man.
I love the fact that any football movie, well, every football movie should end with the entire team just chanting the word Super Bowl. Uh, at the top. Just I feel like that's just how they should all end. And
Oh yeah,
I'm just imagining. I actually, when I watched it, because I thought it was stupid, silly fun. And I love the fact it was licensed. The fact that it was licensed makes it incredible. Um, can you imagine the actual media coverage these days if a team drafted up to number one and in the draft party they're all chanting Super Bowl, Super Bowl? Like, like I just everything about that movie I actually think was almost like designed to take the piss out of serious like football fans. We're like, we're going to draft up. Oh, they wouldn't draft up that much. Oh, yeah, for a quarterback they might. Yeah, we're not even taking a quarterback.
yeah.
It's like
It's funny, like
everything was designed to infuriate real genuine like football fans.
it's funny, like you talk about a love of almost the American sports broadcasting universe. One thing that you've like reminded me of is that the sincerity with which Rich Eisen is talking through what the Cleveland Browns managed to do on day one of the draft with such a serious tone, and he is like, this is horseshit. This is absolute horseshit. What has gone on here? But he's doing it
It's
with
like
total sincerity.
he's like, I've been at this desk before when teams have done this, and like this is an unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
Like, and you could just tell. I do love everything about that. I love the when you mentioned that bit with Rich Eisen. I can't help but think of like juxtapose that next to how the ESPN guys were used in basketball when they were
Yeah.
explaining the playoff bracket competition, and they're just being absolutely ridiculous. And then there's Rich Eisen that actually has to put on a serious face and be
Yeah.
serious in this movie. So yeah, to answer your question, I love it. I love it. It's a great movie. Make sure you
Great.
go watch it.
Yep. They got
And
David
then, and
Putney in
truth
the end.
be,
That's the only
and truth
they
be
got him,
told,
and
he
that's
couldn't like. They're actually the scary thing is that like that version of the Browns isn't the most dysfunctional, terrible office of the Browns that we've seen in the past 20 years.
Yes.
Like Kevin Costner
That
wouldn't have
is,
traded for Deshaun Watson.
yeah, that is one of the hottest takes that's ever landed on any given Sunday. That is absolutely spot on.
I'm just saying, Kevin Costner. I think with the people at his disposal in that building, they wouldn't have made the mistakes that the Browns have made over the last 3 or 4 years. Is all I'm saying.
Jennifer Garner would have said, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Kevin?"
pull him in the line.
No, yeah, no
Stop
chance. And
ruining
if
my.
Fiona
This
tried,
is
and
my
if Fiona
team.
tried to step in, she would have been, no, we're not doing it.
No.
Mate, you've been so generous with your time, and we've worked through the perils of the internet of far north Queensland. But last question from me: the hardest thing about being an Australian fan, what is it for you? Is it the internet that you can't get up there and you can't actually watch the game, or what is it?
Oh, I honestly think being a news guy, it's the coverage around Super Bowl. I,
Mm.
I, I can't. I find it really difficult. I find it really hard to watch all the interest in the halftime show when to me that is my time to apart from this year obviously because there were different elements of intrigue that went into the halftime show this year that caught my attention, but
It was great.
I think that like that's part of it for me is just and I think there is almost an element of that gatekeeper status that I think a lot of longtime fans feel sometimes. um the whole, oh yeah, going in to watch the game. Oh, it's like, oh, on a personal level, I'd rather watch it with a close select few people and be able to watch the game and break it down. But I'm also the same way with the AFL Grand Final. Like I've never gone to a pub to watch the AFL Grand Final. I'll always watch it with Dad when I can. Like that's
Mm.
just personal preference. So I think the most difficult thing for me is all the excitement that all of a sudden comes out of nowhere within 2 weeks of the game from all the other, we're not talking casual fan, but super casual fan, and they're also the first people to look at a game that's 7-3 at halftime and say, "Oh, this is a boring game."
Yeah.
I think that's probably it. But I feel old
Mm.
for saying that.
So the flip side of that, though, is how do you train Australians to appreciate football properly? So, what would you say, and this is my last question, to convince someone to follow the NFL?
I well, the good thing is there's never been a better time to do it. Um, I would say, even though they're not as good these days, I would still say if you're a gamer, go pick yourself up a copy of Madden. I think that's probably
Mm.
like one of the surefire, quickest ways to do it. Um, and I would actually probably just say to like watch some of the profile pieces first. I think there's an element of there's a bit of like it can be overwhelming watching the game itself for the first time. So I'd say
Mm.
like watch something in that can be easily kind of digested, like a season of Hard Knocks or something like that. Just watch or like
Yeah.
one of the best seasons I ever watched was that first season of All or Nothing with the Arizona Cardinals. Um,
Yes,
like
that was
those
absolutely, yeah, 100%.
those
That was so
those
good.
shows were perfect. And I think that's the kind of thing where instead of just chucking like, hey, here's a really, really good, exciting game, watch it, you'll enjoy it, and then oh, I don't really actually know what's going on. It's hard. It's harder for me to enjoy it than you. Like, give him, tell him to watch. Okay, that short answer. Watch all the seasons of All or Nothing on Amazon. We're not sponsored by Amazon, but you should be. He's got enough money.
Yeah.
But yeah, All or Nothing, I reckon, are probably the best series to watch if anyone wants to kind of get an idea on how things work, bigger picture, and also the personalities behind the game.
I love that. Love that. Break it down into its simplest form and enjoy it before you get into it and learn rules like, fumbling on the 1 yard line and you lose the ball. So, again, mate, you've been huge. We've battled the elements and we've gotten through. You've convinced Charlie with the the episodes to go back and watch. I'm sure we'll be talking about the Arizona Cardinals in All or Nothing again soon. But thanks again for your time, mate. We know you've had a big career change. You want to tell people where we can find you now?
Yeah, so you can see me over on Nine News Queensland now. I was with Channel 7 for 4 years up here in Brizzy, and I don't know if you know the layout of Brisbane, but literally I've moved a kilometre down the road because all the stations are up on the hill up here. Yeah, just moved down there, so doing a lot of bit of freedom to chase some pretty good stories and stuff up here, and there's always plenty happening with the lead up to Brisbane 2032, which will happen.
Definitely going to happen.
Like that.
Definitely going to happen.
Definitely, it's 100%. Yeah, it has to. It better. Yeah, so that's where you can find me, and I'm always looking to do American football stuff when I can. So, and we got plenty of guys, and we got plenty of guys coming out of Queensland at the moment. Obviously, Pete Carroll was a massive raps on Lucky Tussie from out at Goodna, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you back on to talk more about that because you are all over it. And when the Vikings play the Packers, it's probably another prime time to get you on there and talk shit.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Thanks for your time, mate. We'll speak to you soon.
Good on you, Ned. Great to talk.
Pleasure. Talk to you.